Impacts, smears, and stutters are advanced animation techniques, but we can make them simple if we observe their real-world basis and memorize a protocol for animating them from imagination. By the end of this video, you will see all three of these types of frames in one animation. Be sure to leave me a like and let's get started. Smear frames are an artificial motion blur. They're used to improve the smoothness and fluidity of very fast motions in animation. Smear frames do have a basis in reality. It's called long exposure. Let's think of the eye as a camera. A camera has a shutter that opens and closes, determining how long the sensor is exposed to light. And you'll notice the longer we expose the camera to light, the more motion blur we get. So today we're using High Paint. This is a free digital art and animation program. You can get it on iOS and Android. I'm using High Paint here with the Huion Canvas Slate 11. They do make a 13. A bigger tablet. I do like both, but the portability and the speed of the 11 captures me just that little bit more. So the goal when animating smear frames, like kind of like this one right here, is that you want to create the motion blur effect. Okay, now there's two ways we can do that, and notice the blur is increasing towards the impact point. I'm not having a lot of blurs up near where their hammer started swinging from. If you check the reference, that's where I got that from. Something you really can't know unless you have the reference, okay? Two strategies I like to use for implementing smear frames, and one is doubles. So doubles, say this is the frame right here. This is where your object would be in the stream of time. But with the smears, you're adding doubles. You're adding duplicates of the object in past times, okay? Think of it kind of like a timing chart. Of course, in this case, we'd have more duplicates here and here because the impact frame is going to come right after the hammer contacts the object, okay? So you just literally draw the same object again at a different point in time, all right? The next one is blurs. Now blurs really exaggerate the path of motion using these streaking flowing lines, okay? So this is the original point we have. This is not really in the frame. This is just for reference. And then you have almost like a smeared effect. You took some ketchup on a plate and smeared it to show the long exposure of this frame, okay? Remember, this is all just a long exposure shot. Last strategy, a bonus third strategy, is using both blurs and doubles. This, in my opinion, produces the best effect. I think this is the most natural looking. All right, so remember, long exposure frames come before the impact to enhance the flow of the animation and improve the sense of speed, okay? You see that? Right before the impact. That's the impact. Again, I also put a little bit of stretch on the hammer as well, and then some squash on it during the impact to really improve that as well. So let's watch it, see how that looks. I think that looks really good. Last tip before we move on to impact frames is that you want to make smears on ones. Animating on ones, they look the best. If you don't know how to animate on ones, check out this video right here. Let's move on. Next up, impact frames are drawings that highlight the focal point of an animation to increase the power of an impact. So you can really think of impact frames as just a artificially drawn camera shake. Looking at the reference, we can see that impact frames do have a basis in reality. As soon as I whack that box with the hammer, everything sort of starts to blur for a second. But in animation, we typically choose a focal point with the impact frame, something that doesn't happen in the reference, okay? So the focal point will be the hammer slamming down right here, okay? So we're gonna have the whole frame affected by that impact. So we're probably gonna redraw the character with some jagged lines like this, but the jagged lines are not just going to be random. They're going to be all pointing towards that impact to bring more attention to that spot. So I'm not going to bother doing this in the rough animation. I just put some pow effects around the impact point, and I'll just put a red X to signify that's really where the focal point is going to draw the viewer's attention to in this moment. Colors are probably going to be black and white. We've reserved those places on the color palette for a high contrast frame like this. Remember, the point is send the contrast through the roof for one frame to increase the effect of that impact on the beat. If you think about it as rhythm and beats, this whole animation is going like zoop, bah. You really want to sound it out like that because that makes it obvious where the beat lies, where the impact frame goes. Okay, there's not much more to talk about this. You'll see it in the final animation right now. Let's talk about stutter frames. The way we're implementing this is by interlacing a diminishing counter motion frame to create a shaky motion. These aren't the only type of stutter frame, but they're gonna be the one we focus on today, okay? So you start a stutter by animating a regular slowdown. If you don't know how to animate that, click this video here. These are just the points in time, right? So you got your slow. Let me switch to a pen because I cannot draw anything with this. The pen performance is pretty good on this tablet, by the way. It's still more basic than some other tablets I use, but I had no problem. Okay, so now this is your standard slow down animation. You know, if you know your spacing principles, should be pretty easy to animate that. You want to study up on those with this video up here. So you animate that first, and then after each of these frames, you're inserting a stutter frame. Let me put this in a different color. See, I did this all wrong. I gotta make these are the normal frames are black, the stutter frames are red, okay? So these are the normal frames, and then we're interlacing stutter frames. Do you see that? These are these red circles back here. They are moving the opposite direction. So a stutter frame will come after frame 1, then after frame 2. After frame 3, after frame 4. These stutter frames are interlaced this way within time, okay? And they look like this. The same pose, just pushed back a little bit. See, they're going this way. Now, this is what it would look like if we saw an onion skin of that. So we have the first frame, it's pushed back this much. Second frame, pushed back. Remember, these red frames are coming afterwards. Remember that timing, right? That timing, the red frames are coming afterwards. Let's put it all together down here because it'll make a bit more sense. So we have our normal slow down of the ball, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 5th one. Let me just do that more accurately. So we have that first stutter frame, and then we have the first frame, then a stutter after that. Second frame, stutter comes later. This red stutter, although it's behind the ball in spacing, it's ahead of it in timing, okay? So you got the third frame, then a stutter comes after. So these red balls, it starts with this black and this black circle right here and then goes back, okay? These red ones are after each one in time. They are forward in time, right? And I'll show you what that effect looks like. The last part we need to talk about is that these stutters are diminishing. So you see how we moved back the circle this much spacing, about a centimeter in space. And the next one's smaller, we didn't move it back as much. That's the second stutter frame. Third stutter frame, we moved back just a little bit. Fourth one, just a tiny bit. Fifth one, even less. So they're diminishing in space, so eventually the stutter starts to fade away. Does that make sense? Let's see how it looks. This is a rough version, but it still employs the concept well. Let's hit play on here. Right, so it almost looks like he's loading up a strike. Okay, do you see that? Click, 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 and then the stutter diminishes, so not moving back as far as it gets closer to the destination, okay? So we have yet to add this to the full character animation in the final cleanup art, and you'll be able to see exactly how stutter frames work in action. Let's do that right now. So there you have it, an animation with smears, stutters, and impacts. Really not so complicated after all. I really like to simplify complicated tasks by breaking them down into a chart of our goal, method, and tools. I've experienced major success with this strategy because where there is a will, there is a way. Thank you so much for watching this video. Special thanks to HiPaint for sponsoring it and Huion for sending the supplies over. If you want to check them out, you can look in the link in the description below. HiPaint is a really cool app you can use. It's nice to see high quality tools available at a very low price. If you're willing to go for a deep dive on animation concepts, I posted an hour-long animation course introducing almost every single concept we discussed on this channel. Check it out right here. That's all from me, guys. Thank you for watching. Happy animating. Peace.